Excuse me, do you have a few minutes to talk about Ellie Goldratt? I'm Ray Myers and welcome to Craft vs. Cruft. Today I'd like to show you a presentation I've been working on called Herbie and The Goal, subtitled Improving Organizational Performance with Unity of Purpose and Theory of Constraints. Let's give it a shot, shall we? So first I'm going to talk about bottlenecks, the nature of bottlenecks, this underrated concept. Then we're going to tell a parable called The Story of Herbie. And then we're going to talk about unity of purpose and introduce the 5 focusing steps of theory of constraints, which is one of several thinking processes in the theory of constraints system. Can you think of a time in your life when you've had a bottleneck? You've been affected by a bottleneck. Perhaps you've been the bottleneck. Why was the system constrained by that? How did that make you feel? What did you learn from that situation? Perhaps you work on a large software project. It might span many teams, many code bases. How many bottlenecks total are in that entire situation? Do you think there's 5 to 10? I think there's 10 to 20, maybe 20 to 30 different bottlenecks, something else. Let me ask you another question. How many necks does a bottle have? A system has one constraint, one aspect, one factor that is holding it back more than anything else is. That one factor is what determines the global output as opposed to just any local observation. Only by adjusting the bottleneck here could we actually make the overall flow, the end result, globally better. Anything else would be a local optimization. If you have a chain with a weakest link, as all chains have, strengthening any link other than the weakest one would not actually strengthen the chain overall. It would only make the chain heavier or more expensive. You can only strengthen the chain by strengthening its weakest link. So, on to the story of Herbie. Now this originates from a book called The Goal, but I think it works pretty well on its own. This is a scout troop. Traditionally this is told with Boy Scouts, any kind of scouts you like. Now the troop is marching back to camp. We have several scout members, Herbie in the back, marching the slowest, not able to march as fast as some of the other members. You have the troop leader looking out for everyone. We're all trying to get back to camp. So as they run ahead, Herbie falls behind. We can't lose anyone. Everyone wait for Herbie. Herbie catches up, but then Herbie continues to walk a little slower than everyone else does. So they're running ahead, having to wait, running ahead, having to wait. You may have experienced a similar situation to this in your life. Now the leader says, hey, we need to stop running ahead. Remember what our goal is. We all have the same goal. We all get back to camp together safely as soon as possible. None of us running ahead is in service of that goal. So from here on, everyone march behind Herbie. Instead of Herbie being in the back, Herbie is now in the front. We all stay behind him. Are we going any slower? Individually, in some cases, yes, but we're also not having to stop and wait behind. So the troop collectively is not marching any slower than they were before. It's just the same as when they were ahead of Herbie, but with more consistency. Now, as they all do this, they start to notice, Herbie's got, in scout fashion, all this extra gear, very prepared, being weighed down. This is causing him to march more slowly than he might otherwise. So what they end up doing is redistributing the gear amongst themselves. And now Herbie can walk faster, doesn't need as many breaks. The entire troop now speeds up, makes it to camp together safely more quickly. Now what does Herbie represent? Herbie in this system is the bottleneck. The bottleneck is not always a person or a team. Sometimes it's a machine, a concept. There are all kinds of bottlenecks. Wherever it is, focusing on it is the way to achieve global optimization, not just these local optimizations like running ahead. So to achieve a goal, first find Herbie. Now let's talk about unity of purpose. The troops solved the global problem by realizing they had the same goal. The local optimizations, the running ahead, didn't help. But in business, we often have local incentives that are like running ahead that distract from the solution, from the collective problem solving around our shared goal. But with a common goal, we realize we are never in conflict. Any belief that we are in conflict is an illusion, distracting from the goal. And in business, the goal is usually simple. Make money now and in the future. That seems so obvious as to not need to be stated. But imagine what would happen if we, say, had two departments. One of them is tasked with making money now, is only concerned with that. Another is interested only in making money in the future. Well, these departments now appear to be at odds. Perhaps they are contending for other resources in the business, other agenda items and things, and they are there in contention. You can picture the dev QA split if you like. You can picture the dev and ops split, or any other org you like. They might believe, because of how things have been delegated, that they are at odds. But if we are all on the side of making money now and in the future, those conflicts are all revealed to be illusions. We have unity of purpose. We can build a community of trust. So we went through in this story the 5 focusing steps. I'm going to first give you the version articulated by Clark Ching, which is first find the bottleneck, optimize the bottleneck. That might be trying to get Herbie to hurry up, which you might get a little bit of mileage out of. Then the C, there's 3 C's: collaborate, coordinate, curate. So we rearranged how the troop was marching so that everyone was marching behind Herbie. Then we have upgrade. The redistribution of gear actually allowed the constraint to move more quickly. And then S is start over. Now, we didn't get to that in the story, but you imagine as soon as Herbie is no longer marching the slowest, well, now Greg or Clara is marching most slowly, and that is the new constraint. Everyone should march behind them, and we should go from there. So those are the 5 focusing steps as Clark Ching's system articulates them. There, you notice they spell focus with 3 C's. The original version is from The Goal by Ellie Goldratt, and the steps are the same but named differently. Identify the constraint. Exploit, meaning fully utilize the constraint, right? We're not actually talking about exploiting people here. The connotation's a little weird. Subordinate the system to the constraint. See, everyone march behind Herbie. Orchestrate everything around the constraint. Then elevate the constraint. Allow the constraint to no longer be as constraining, right? Actually increase its capacity. Then finally, prevent inertia. What that means is once the constraint's been elevated, something else is actually the constraint. You need to identify it again. You need to stop the inertia that comes from identifying a win and then stopping your focus on improvement. We need a continuous focus of improvement. This is also called in that system the process of ongoing improvement, or POOGI with 2 O's. So I mentioned the book The Goal by Ellie Goldratt. That was put out in 1984, and that introduced the theory of constraints. He also had several other books in the coming years. The book The Phoenix Project, many people are unaware, is actually a rewrite of The Goal in an IT context, in a DevOps context, telling the story of these sort of feuding orgs, dev and ops, telling the story of Brent, who is the bottleneck in that story instead of Herbie. So DevOps contains several applications of the theory of constraints if you look at it through a certain light. And Gene Kim also rewrote his book, The Phoenix Project, as the Unicorn Project a few years later. So these are some really great business novels that show the certain patterns of conflicts and how they can be rethought. If you enjoy that format, I would definitely encourage you to check out any of these you haven't already. To put this in a broader context of the idea space that they're in, though maybe not a complete one, you have in the mid-'80s the Toyota production system first being experimented with in North America. Same time you have The Goal published and Theory of Constraints being introduced kind of around the world. And the Toyota production system and other things inspire the lean methodology, which is first sort of formalized in 1990 and put out. We have Extreme Programming, the Agile Manifesto, coming out towards the end of the decade as different methodologies converging around shorter increments start appearing in software as a more effective way to do things. Coming a decade after that, we have the DevOps movement gaining momentum, which is in some ways a result of the Agile movement. It generally is a more holistic approach to continuous delivery and harmonizing business interests. And we saw earlier the Phoenix Project, the DevOps novel, being a descendant of the theory of constraints directly. And then we have site reliability engineering being published, documenting what some refinements of DevOps into a more formalized methodology were looking like, and that's also been influential. Maybe around 2024 we're due for a new one. I don't know. What do you think? But this is where I would yield for questions. So if you have any, I'd love to read your comments. I try to respond to them all. You might subscribe. Let me know you are interested in seeing more videos, or comment some topics you'd like to see in the future. There'll be more details in the description. Ellie Goldratt said, "Until an end consumer buys, no one in the entire supply chain has actually sold." And Lao Tzu said, "With patience, the most tangled cord may be undone." Thank you.